Yeah.
So getting rid of the time clock and making peace that, God, I'm on God's time and he's leading me. And it doesn't mean that I have to sit back, right? Like I need to do some work, of course, and I can have goals and things that I'm working toward. But ultimately, at the end of the day, if I don't get there in the time that I thought I should, it just means I wasn't supposed to.
Welcome back to Her Unraveled Life. I'm your host, Christian life coach Amy Wadlington, and let me just tell you that today you are in for a treat. Today's guest is a fellow coach, and I have just got to say that I've been so inspired by her heart, her honesty, and her no fluff approach to helping women grow businesses that actually work. And I am talking about the kind of business that brings in clients without selling your soul to the algorithm or running yourself ragged trying to figure out funnels and freebies that don't even convert. Ask me how I know. Michelle Vroom is a marketing coach and a podcast host who helps women get visible, get clients, and build real relationships that lead to sustainable businesses. Her free Facebook group, Market Like a Boss, is full of the kind of practical, empowering tips that actually make you think. I have found so much wisdom from that space and from her, and I know that you will too. Hey friend, let me guess, you're exhausted from overthinking, second guessing yourself, and feeling stuck in a cycle of worry and overwhelm. No matter how hard you try, it feels like nothing changes. You wonder if you're the problem, if you'll ever feel peace again. You are not alone, and the good news, you don't have to stay stuck. Welcome to Her Unraveled Life. I'm Amy Wadlington, a Christian life coach, spiritual mentor, and a woman who has walked through fire and come out stronger. I've faced trauma, single parenthood, financial struggles, and chronic illness, but through faith and mindset work, I found peace, and so can you. Here's how I can help. We'll uncover what's really keeping you stuck so you can finally quiet your mind, take control of your thoughts, and break free from overwhelm. You'll reconnect with God, gain clarity in your calling, and step forward with confidence. If you're ready to stop just surviving and start living with peace, clarity, and purpose, you're in the right place. And if you want to go deeper, I offer one-on-one coaching for real, lasting change. So grab a pen, some paper, and that cup of coffee you've reheated 3 times because it's time to unravel the chaos and step into the life God has for you. Let's get started. Michelle, welcome to the show. I am so honored to have you here today.
Thank you so much, Amy. What a lovely introduction, and I'm thrilled to be here as well.
Yeah, I'm so glad that you're here. So let's rewind a little bit. What made you start your business in the first place? And did you always have this confidence that I see from you, or did it come after a few messy, tear-stained pivots like the rest of us?
Oh goodness. Yes, yes, yes. I could probably do like 10 podcast episodes just about that. It's interesting. The entrepreneurial spirit has always been in my DNA. Fun fact, my great-grandfather started an apple cider business during the Great Depression. He was selling cider door to door. And so that became the family company. My dad ended up becoming like the CEO of that company before it was sold. And so I will say I come from entrepreneurial stock. I always wanted to be, I don't know that I termed it a business owner. I said, freelancer, right?
Mm.
I always kind of had a little bit of that drive inside of me. I remember thinking, and this was before I even had kids, I think I might have been newly married. And I remember thinking, you know what? That's something I'll do when I'm down the road, like in my 50s, or when I have, my kids are out of the house. I mean, thank goodness I didn't listen to that, or I would still be quite a ways away from that. And I just remember thinking that's something I can do, but it has to be later in life. And that's just what I told myself. It wasn't until I went to, nonprofit. I started working for a nonprofit right out of college. I did a public relations agency. So my background is in PR and marketing. I went to a corporate job, had a really nice, cushy corporate job. Like, was making 6 figures, was happy. Like, boss worked remote. It was great. And then I had my first child. So I'm a boy mom. I have 3 boys. And I had my first child and everything changed. And I think a lot of people can relate to that, where I knew I still wanted something for myself. I still needed to run a business, to bring in revenue. But I also wanted to still have a career of some kind, but I was not available to like put him in daycare. That just wasn't something that my husband and I wanted. We didn't feel like that was the path that we were supposed to go on. And so I remember being like, okay, well, if there's ever an opportunity to do this, now is the time. And so we obviously prayed about it, right? Definitely felt that prompting from God. Spent my maternity leave with my son, like hustling, if I'm honest, to get a couple clients. Like I had people coming to me through like family and friends, like that network, who
Mm.
were interested in getting help with social media. So I was like, huh, I could, this could really turn into something, right? So God definitely opened some doors at that time. I went back to work for 2 months and then I decided to leave. And, it was a huge, huge sacrifice in so many ways, a massive financial sacrifice. I mean, my husband and I cut back a lot in order for me to do that, like more than I think most people are willing to. Um, we had to sacrifice time. I mean, there was a lot that went into it.
Mm.
Now, having been in business for 9 years, I just celebrated my ninth anniversary. I can say that my life is forever changed because of that decision. It doesn't mean that it's always been easy. There are times where I say to my husband, maybe I'll just quit and go work at Starbucks. And he's like, number one, you would be terrible. Like you would hate it. Number two, they probably fire you like the first day. Like you're not like, that that's not for you. And I always like to make these dramatic statements. So running a business is hard, but that one decision has led to so much freedom for my family, which is something that I am really passionate about helping other women with. I've also made a lot of money. Now, all of that comes from the Lord, right? I want to be very clear about that. Like everything in my business comes from Him. But I am also very proud of what I've built and what I've created. And to be able to, be the woman who's making a lot of money, but works 20 hours a week, never sacrifices moments with her kids. Recently I went to my son's preschool, to be a mystery reader for the day. Like that kind of freedom is something that I'm so thankful for. But it did require a huge sacrifice. It did require me to cut back so that I could, start the business, invest in the business, all of that. But, I did it out of faith. I did it out of what I knew was possible for me. And God has blessed that, you know?
Hmm. I love that. I love it so much. And I had also a great grandfather. He sold moonshine during the
So very
the,
different.
yeah. So a little bit different than the apple cider, but yes, I had a great grandfather who did moonshine and great grandparents that had a little store that they ran in a small mountain town, and a grandfather and a grandmother who were hairstylists who owned a salon. So that lineage of entrepreneurship, I know what you mean when you say it's in your DNA. It's
It
like,
is.
yeah, you just feel it from the start
Mhm.
that God just
Yeah,
places that in you, and it's a generational thing that comes.
that's
And whether
cool.
you're first generation entrepreneur or multi-generational, you know, that you know.
Yeah, that's such a good way to
Mm.
put it. That's really cool. Yeah.
Yeah. I also love that you
Mhm.
talked about the sacrifices that you made, because I think that a lot of times we think as Christians that if God calls me to this, that it's going to be easy. I don't know where that comes from, because there's nothing in the Bible that makes it look easy. But
Mhm.
it seems like, okay, God is calling me to this. I just have to, just do what he says and it'll all come easily to me. And there are so many sacrifices. There's a cost to stepping into what God calls us to do. And I love that you touch on that, because we do have to count the cost of what it is that we're stepping into. But what we end up sacrificing always is worth what we end up getting in the end, even if it is hard work and we sacrifice things that are really hard to give up.
It is. I mean, I don't necessarily face the financial stuff as much anymore because my business is very, stable, very consistent, which I'm super thankful for. But like there are other sacrifices that you have to make. It's not just about that. I think being a business owner does require a lot of sacrifices. It requires also, so much faith, right? And being able to give up control. And that's really hard. So yeah, it's not like someone handed me a business. No one handed me, clients, right? I had to work for every single thing that I have in this business. And it did require us to live very uncomfortably for a while, And I think, though, that while that was hard, there was also such a beautiful thing about that. Like there's trade offs because now there's challenges that I deal with that I didn't when I, started my business. So, God's in all of it. He will pave your way and always be with you through it all. But yeah, it was a sweet time. I mean, I don't often reflect on that as much as I probably should, but it was a really sweet time and I'm thankful for it. I'm thankful for the growth that came with that.
That's awesome. And you had little babies too at the same time.
Yeah,
So,
I decided a 6 month old would be a great time to start a business, to go full time in your business with a 6 month old. Why not? And then I
right.
added more kids. So, it all worked out. I mean, I'm thankful for the life that we have and the fact that, and no shame for anyone who's had to put their kids in daycare. It just wasn't what was on my heart. And I'm
Right.
thankful that we were able to make it work. Um, and I'm thankful, yeah, I'm just thankful for the way that God provided in that time, even though it was really challenging and I didn't know the future and I didn't know what would come.
Hmm.
And none of us does. Even now, I'm like, what will the next 9 years bring? Who knows? You know?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. I also love that you mentioned that you had these skills that you brought to the table. A lot of times we think, uh, God's calling me to start a business. I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing with it. I don't know what it's going to look like, but he doesn't waste anything. I can think
Yes.
back to my first career job that I had. I had jobs starting at 14, but at 19, I started my first job as a career, and it was in a phone call center where I was on the phone and I was troubleshooting technology with my customers, and it was B2B. And I thought, what a waste of time this is. But I was making really good money, so I stuck with it. But I use the skills that I learned in that capacity to this day in my business. And so when you try to think about, what can I do? Think about all of the things that you've done, the skills that you have, the talents that you have that God has given you, and the past jobs. What did you learn from those? And start pulling pieces out of that. And what made you decide that this was the direction that you could go? Is it just your experience that you had and the skills you had?
I mean, I think it really was first initially born out of just wanting to be home with the kids, but still wanting something for myself. So I think it was a love of what I do, but also wanting more flexibility. So I will say it was probably more about the kids. It's not that it's not about them anymore, but now it's changed into just like the sheer impact that I've been able to have and how much I love, love, love coaching other women. I mean, I didn't start as a coach. I started as a done for you provider. So, someone who was doing social media for my clients. I didn't even know what coaching was, to be totally honest with you. Like, business coaching was not a thing. And so that didn't start until about a year and a half into business. So, yeah, I think I saw a need at the time. I knew that I knew there were a lot of business owners who wanted help with social media, small business owners. And so that was like my initial first kind of niche was like, yeah, no, I want to help them. I have skills. They need help. I love the idea of helping someone who's small. I think probably from having worked for, a global health insurance company, this big corporation, I had this desire to like help the small person. But I think it was a combination. It was like, yes, I love what I do, but I really needed to be flexible and fit within the life that I now have as a mom.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I love that. And I didn't know what a coach was either when I was
Yeah.
called to be, because I was a natural encourager and
Yep.
cheerleader for people. And I had lost my job, my 15-year career in marketing.
Mm.
And during 2020,
Yep.
everybody else got laid off. I got
Yep.
laid off too. And
Yep.
a friend of mine was like, "You need to be a life coach." And I was like, "What's a life coach?" What
Yep.
is that?
Yep.
So I
Yeah.
was in the same spot. I had no idea what coaching was.
It is becoming more mainstream. I don't
It
know if I
is.
would say it's fully mainstream or reached the tipping point yet, but yeah, it
Yeah.
was, I mean, in 2016 when I started, it was like almost unheard of.
I can imagine because in 2020 I had never heard of
Yeah.
coaching.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
It's been an interesting dynamic. And now I think, the industry has shifted. That's the other thing. It's like I've had to adapt so many times over the years that, that's been interesting in and of itself.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes sense. Well, my audience is full of women who know that they have been called to something. They know that they have something in them. They've either already started a business or they've been sitting on this dream for years, but they can't seem to get any momentum. What is the most common mistakes that you see women making when they're in that season of their business?
Yeah, it's so interesting because nobody hands you a rule book when you start your business. And I think it's very easy. And I say this as a marketer, and I work with a lot of women who have a marketing background or who are marketers. It's easy to get wrapped up in these strategies and tools that don't actually move the needle at that moment. I truly believe that while a lot of things can work for your business, not every strategy makes sense for the phase of business that you are at. And what I tend to see people get tripped up in, and I myself fell into this category, especially early on, is that they're focused on the wrong things. things that are going to slow them down when getting clients versus speed them up, right? And I obviously like speed. My last name is kind of a I liked speed before I even had the last name. But I always I mean for me it was like, okay, I have 20 hours a week to work, barely. I got to make the most of that. And most of the women I work with, I mean, that's part of why people hire me is because they're like, well, if you've been able to do this, right, working 20 hours a week with three kids, like I want to do that too. And so I think it's the focusing on the wrong thing. So to give you an example, I focused so much on my website when I first started my business. I was not focused on building the relationships that were needed to carry me through to consistent clients. And I'll tell you, I felt that because a year into business, I lost three clients in one day. So
Mm.
almost my entire client base wiped out in one day. All things that were just, I could not, had no control over, right? And this happened 2 months before I was due to give birth to my second child. So who's going to hire me for a retainer job, right? When I have 2 months before maternity leave. And I contemplated quitting because I had no pipeline. I had no clients waiting. I had no community. I had no relationships. I mean, I had relationships, but I wasn't really focused on that. And so, and I got caught up in working for the clients that I did have and not doing enough relationship building. And that
Mm.
was a big wake up call for me. Obviously, I didn't quit, right? God provided as he always does. But that was a big wake up call for me. Like the basics is the stuff that people skip over, but is actually needed. And so that actually led to me starting my community Market Like a Boss. And fast forward 2 years after that, I had a client leave suddenly 30 days into our contract, and I filled her spot within 24 hours. So you
Wow.
talk about like such a different, dichotomy of two experiences and, what I was able to build. So relationships are everything, especially in this economy.
Hmm.
As you see AI continue to gain power and traction, I think people crave that human to human connection. So I think the thing that slows people down, the thing that they miss is just what is going to get you clients in the door faster? It's always going to be the relationships, the networking, but it's the thing that people skip over or they spend all this time creating content, right? But then not actually having any conversations. I mean, there's so much I
Mm.
can dive into, more detail around that, of course, but that's what I've noticed over the years and what I tend to see. And not just with people who are brand new, like I see that with people who are a year, 2 years into business, 3 years, even, more than that.
Hmm. Yeah. So you say that the key is relationships over strategy. For the women who are they've already tried everything. What does that actually look like practically in her real life? Where should she even start with that?
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, if someone's listening to this and saying kind of like, I've tried all that already, I'm willing to bet, I would bet money that they've seen like glimpses of success, right? They've seen some things that have worked, but they haven't identified the pattern yet. Because if you've tried, I mean, if you can truly say you've tried everything, which part of me is like, have you though? Right? The coach in me is like, have you? If you truly have, there are success leaves clues, right? There are glimpses of success. And so I would stop and almost do like a little audit and say, okay, where have I made connections? Even if it's with, somebody who can refer business my way, like where did that person come from? Where did that relationship come from? Like I do think it's important when you've been doing a lot of activity because the women I work with, they're not like sitting on their hands, right? They're probably doing too much. If you want my honest opinion, that's another thing. They're spread really thin. If you say I'm doing everything, you're doing too much. You're not zeroed in, right? And so
Mm.
you're kind of like casting a wide net and staying on the surface versus being able to go deep. So I think the first step is to look at like where do I notice patterns? So, there's a couple of core relationships you need if you want consistent clients. Number one, you need referral relationships. So, do I have people that can refer business to me? If no, then I need to build that up. If yes, when was the last time I checked in with them? When was the last time I asked them what they need? Where did my best clients come from? You know, or
Mm.
someone I enjoyed working with, like where did that person come from? Where have I gotten some interest? Even if it's like I'm booking calls or I'm getting people coming to me, they may not be converting yet, but where are they coming from? Like starting to really challenge your brain to say, let me find the patterns because they do exist instead of, there is no pattern because I think our brain likes to default to that. So
Yes.
you need referral relationships. That's where I started, right? Because it's like all it takes is just telling people what you're doing. I mean, I remember putting up a Facebook post that said, okay, friends and family, This is what I'm up to. I started my business. This is what I'm doing. If you know of anyone who might be interested, I would love an introduction. Well, somebody that I was on the board with at the Public Relations Society of America, or I wasn't on the board, I was a volunteer. Somebody I volunteered with for that organization reached out to me privately and said, well, I'm actually going on maternity leave. She works at a PR agency. We need a consultant to come in and fill my spot for a few months. It's an awesome gig that turned into a longer term relationship. So it all was
Mm-hmm.
because I was willing to tell people what I'm doing. And so you need
Mm-hmm.
to build that up, I think, first and foremost. That's like the fastest way to go out and get some clients, especially if you're brand new. But if you have kind of been neglecting that part of your business, I would definitely go back to that. I think the other type of relationship that you need is, that community of people who will buy from you. They're not necessarily, I mean, they could be referral partners, but like selling directly to the people who would be interested in buying. And so that's my, Facebook community as that community for me. It doesn't have to be a Facebook community, but some kind of community hub where people can come get to know you and build that trust. I mean, we're living in an era where trust is at an all-time low in the industry. I've seen it over the last, I would say, through 3 to 5 years in particular. And so, why should someone hire you? Well, because they have trust with you. Like the people who hire me, I've built up a significant amount of trust. And so I think that the people who have that kind of a community are doing really well. They're not finding it hard to get clients or get consistency.
Mm-hmm.
So, yes, you need to build trust with referral partners, but then you also need to build trust directly with your community. And it's not an overnight fix. It's not something that you can completely automate. And then I think you need, the relationships with your existing clients, right? Like being able to maintain those relationships. And if a client leaves or, you're done whatever work you did with a client, like letting them become a referral partner for you. So I think those are some of the core relationships. And it really does take you being willing to be curious about other people, being willing to serve before you ask for the sale. And these are the basics that, I mean, 8-figure, 9-figure business owners are doing.
Mm.
So if they're doing it, what does that say about us?
Right. Yeah, I love that because I think that a lot of the social media gurus that you see out there that are filling the feed because that's what they're doing. That's what they do is that they say that that's the way to get the business. So they're filling the feed, which means they're filling your head with all you have to do is jump into the DMs. And it's like, no, you're not building any type of relationship by doing that. And
One
uh,
post, one
one
post made me
post,
one email made me $1 million. No, it didn't. If you
right?
did actually make $1 million from that email, it's because you built up a significant amount of trust and relationships for that to
Right.
work. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. There's a lot. And that's where that trust is breaking, is that people say that. Or I saw an ad in my feed today that said, build an entire course in 3 hours using AI. And it's like, but how do you know what the people that you're selling to need? Have you gotten to know them at all? Do you know what their needs are? Because you can't build a course in 3 hours if you haven't done any market research, if you don't know what these people,
Thousand
what do
percent.
the people that you're talking to even need? How can you solve their problem
Thousand percent.
if you don't talk to people? So
Yeah.
I love that you are
Yeah.
talking about relationship and not just relationship with the people who you want to sell to. It's relationships with everybody, with the people who can make referrals to you and you build that trust that way. I've even talked about with dating. I've been single for many years, and if I date anybody, it's not probably going to be somebody I go and meet online. I want somebody to introduce me to them because I want to
Yeah.
trust that relationship.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. And you never know where that client's going to come from. So you do need to be planting those seeds. And honestly, I think a lot of women beat themselves up because they're like, well, it's not happening fast enough for me. So it must mean that, my offer doesn't work, or it must mean that, my marketing doesn't work, or I need to change something, or I need to change strategies. When in reality, most of the time, if not all of the time, it's because they didn't plant enough seeds.
Mm,
It's like, why would you go out in a garden and plant like 2 seeds and then wait for it to sprout? Or, how crazy would it be to see like your neighbor, who has this beautiful garden planting seeds and then the next day, like ripping them up, like digging them up again,
right.
before they'd had a chance to sprout. And I think that's what a lot of people are doing in the industry. And it's actually slowing them down even more. They just don't realize it because our brain likes to think, likes to feel productive, right? So it's like it feels more productive to start over or
Hmm.
to, refine something. And I'm speaking as somebody who's fallen down that rabbit hole many times because I love marketing. Well, it's actually not more productive though for me to create another marketing plan.
Mm.
It's more productive for me to make tweaks to the plan I have based on the actions I've been taking. And if you're
Mm-hmm.
not taking enough action and, planting enough seeds, it's going to be really hard to know what is working. So the people who say I've done everything, I think they're the people though that haven't been sticking consistently with something. They've been sort of like maybe scattering seeds everywhere but not really taking the time to nurture those seeds and cultivate that garden and water it, not because they don't want to, but because they feel like it should be moving faster. And that's a lie that I think a lot of people have told in this industry. I think it's a lie from the devil too,
Mm.
you know?
Yeah.
Like you're not moving fast enough, you're not doing enough.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's not from the Lord though.
No. No.
And believe me, that voice is loud. I've heard it. I mean, people look at me and think, oh, well, once you get to that level in business, everything must be great. No, I hear the voice sometimes even louder. Like you're going to go backwards. And I don't know. I want people listening to know where that voice is coming from, like to stop and pause and be like, wait, is that coming from the Lord? Where is that coming from?
Mm-hmm.
Because it's causing you a lot of stress that you don't need. I mean, business is stressful enough, right? Like you
Right.
don't need to then slow yourself down with that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And one thing that I say a lot is if shame worked, it would have worked by now. And so
Yes.
shaming
Yes.
yourself and beating yourself
Hmm.
up, and you would never tell a child who's riding a bike that, you're not doing it right. Why don't you just quit? You would
I
never
would
say
never, it
that.
would like break my heart to say that. Yeah.
Yeah. So why do
Yeah.
we say it to ourselves all the time?
So good. So
Yeah.
good. Yeah. Yep. Very true.
Yeah. And speaking of mindset, I love how you talk about the one mindset that helped you scale to six figures was I'm going to work until this works. I absolutely love that. It's so powerful. And can we unpack that a little bit for the
Yes.
woman who's listening and who's struggling with fear, self-doubt, and feeling like she's already failed because her last idea didn't work?
Yes. Okay, let's be honest. This is not the sexy answer that the industry would have you hear, right? No one really wants to hear that, but it's the most honest answer because, okay, like I don't have a sexy success story. I don't have a flashy success story, right? It took me 3 years to get to six figures, and my business is actually fairly simple and kind of boring, but I like that. You know what I mean? Like that's actually a good thing. And I just think that we tell ourselves it should happen one way. But in reality, the way that I've been able to achieve success has been by just putting one foot in front of the other and continuing. And so the thing that has always led to me feeling comfort, because I'm definitely very ambitious, very driven. I struggle with that sometimes as someone who wants things like yesterday. I still struggle with that, because I can see what's possible. And it's like, I just want to get to this place. And I think we all want to get to this place where we've arrived and that doesn't exist. So I think recognizing that is the first step toward making peace with the fact that like there will always be challenges. But one thing that really helped me was just realizing there's always something new to try. So if I never stop working it and never stop, asking for help, because this doesn't mean I have to have it all on my own, right? It could mean asking for help from a mentor, from a coach. Like that is part of working it until it works. Like I don't want people to hear that and think, well, it's all the burden is on me then. No, it's actually supposed to lighten the load because it's an invitation to pray. It's an invitation to ask for help. It's an invitation to, you know, tweak something or say, okay, like if this could work, what would I do next? Instead of just saying, well, this doesn't work and I'm moving on to the next thing. And so for me, like the fact that there's always something new to try, that I will figure this out as long as I keep going, that was really, really helpful for me and really powerful and ultimately led to me getting to six figures. In order to do that, though, I had to release the timeline. And I see this happen with so many women. It's like they have this,
Mm.
like, none of my kids play basketball, so I don't know where this analogy is coming from. But, in a basketball game where you've got that massive time clock, and it's like
Hmm.
constantly buzzing, right? When you're
Yeah.
at the end of a quarter or whatever. I feel like everybody has that time clock where it's
Yeah.
like ticking, like, up, you're losing time, you're running out of time. Like we have this expectation that we need to get to it and get to it fast or we're going to lose it. And I
Hmm.
think that keeps a lot of people from working it until it works. And so
Hmm.
what we actually need to do is we need to get rid of the clock altogether. It's not and by the way, if everything in our business comes from the Lord, who are we to say, well, I need to have this by this time?
Right.
If we're not careful, we can get caught up in pushing to make more money. And as someone who's gotten caught up in that and led to burnout, it's not a good road to be on.
Yeah.
So getting rid of the time clock and making peace that, God, I'm on God's time and he's leading me. And it doesn't mean that I have to sit back, right? Like I need to do some work, of course, and I can have goals and things that I'm working toward. But ultimately, at the end of the day, if I don't get there in the time that I thought I should, it just means I wasn't supposed to. There was a lesson that I needed to learn.
Hmm. Yeah.
And hopefully that's like refreshing and empowering and comforting for the people listening.
It is for me. And I know that one of the most successful tools in my business so far has been my podcast. And a lot of that isn't necessarily that it's bringing in a lot of income or anything, but I decided that when I started it, I had no idea what I was doing. I felt like God was calling me to use my voice. We're in the era of pay, which in Hebrew is the voice. And
Mm.
he's calling me to use my voice, said, start a podcast. And so I did. Had no idea what I was doing. And so I decided that for the first year of my podcast, and March was a year, that I would have no expectations from my
Mm.
podcast, that it wasn't to grow my business. It wasn't to do anything except help the people who are listening, give them to bless them and give them tools that they can use in their lives and learn how to podcast because I didn't know what I was doing. And the first few episodes are messy and horrible and unprofessional with horrible sound, but I did it. And sometimes we just have to step into it and do it messy. And so it is one of those things that when I let go of the expectation of what this is going to do and thinking, I know that podcasting takes at least a year and having that, well, in a year it's going to start bringing in money on clients and stuff like that. Having that expectation, I think would have ruined it for me. But
Oh,
instead,
so
I
true.
just pulled out all expectation and I said, I'm just going to do this without any expectation. And it has been such a huge blessing for me. And based on the comments and feedback that I get, I think it's a blessing for other people too. So that's that's what we're here to do is to bless each other and to do it in community. And so I love that. I love that mindset of I'm going to work this until it works, especially if God's calling you to it. I think that that's the thing is that we let go of the expectation because if he's calling us to it, it's for a reason. Um, it may not be to be a success. It might be because this is the lesson that we need to learn to get us to where we will be a success. It's like the jars that the widow gathered. Elijah said, "What do you have?" And she said, "Well, all I have is this jar." And he said, "Okay, well, we're going to use what you've got." And then he
Mm.
said, "I want you
Yep.
to go and collect more jars." And so
Yep.
sometimes the thing that we think that we're supposed to be doing, we're just collecting another jar. And all of those jars accumulate to the blessing that God has for us. So it's not always just that one thing, and we get focused on that. So,
I love that. So good.
yeah. So you've said before that it only takes 60 minutes a day to move the needle. And honestly, I think that a lot of women are surprised by how simple that can be. So, can you walk us through what those 60 minutes might look like and how someone who could adapt that if she's still working a full-time job or she's homeschooling her kids?
Yep, absolutely. So when it comes to marketing and getting consistent clients, there are three categories, if you will, three stages that you need to focus on. The first stage is meeting people, networking, right? Like being able to connect with people. So that could look like, networking in other Facebook groups, which was my preferred option because I couldn't go to a lot of networking events, especially with young kids. It could look like going to a networking event. It could look like being featured in someone else's community, doing a podcast interview, whatever that might be. You're going to where your audience is and you're meeting and connecting with people. That's only stage one, though, because what happens is a lot of people will try to, they'll try to rush right to the sale in another Facebook group because they're like, well, I don't want to lose them. Well, the most effective way to build the trust that we talked about earlier is in stage two, which is bringing them to your hub. So I'll just share what this looked like for my business, and then obviously the listeners can adapt. I would spend 30 minutes a day in other Facebook groups, just networking, responding to questions. I tried to filter through using keywords, especially for some of the bigger groups. But honestly, like just getting in there and talking to people was huge. and I would make connections with people and then I would send them to my group, my community. I wasn't trying to sell to them. I wasn't trying to like go get a client. It was, I know that if I can build trust in a relationship with them, they're going to be more likely to work with me. Not everybody from my group works with me. That's fine. I'm not expecting that. But like, I know that if they're in my group and they see the content and they see the heart that I have and the way that I, operate in my perspective on marketing and coaching, the right people will work with me. And so
Mm,
I think a lot of people skip over that and they go from stage one to stage three, which stage three is selling, making those invitations. I plant seeds and make invitations every single day in my group. And so I think a lot of people go to like, I need to meet someone and then immediately get them to become a client. If that did work ever, it certainly doesn't work now in today's market. When trust is low, like you need to follow those three stages. And so 60 minutes a day would look like me spending 30 minutes networking in other groups, inviting people to join my group. And then the other 30 minutes was pouring into my group. And I did a lot of lives. That was just easier for me than creating written content. It also, I do believe, has built trust faster. It used to be that a lot of people watched live. Now I would say most people watch replays. I think that just consumption and the way people consume information has changed. But I get a lot of replay watchers. And a lot of my clients will tell me, like, I binged so much of your stuff before I started working with you, whether it be binging my lives or, binging my podcast episodes. And so what that does is it builds so much trust without me having to be front and center, right? Like, as long as I'm spending 30 minutes a day creating a piece of content that could build trust, that can build trust not just for that day, but for, days and weeks and months to come. And so then you have people hiring you saying, I feel like I know you already. I feel like you're already my coach. Well,
mm,
I just sold them. You know what I mean? Like my content sold them in a way that still preserved the relationship.
mm,
So I think that's what the 60 minutes a day looks like is you spending a portion of that seeking out new connections and leads. And then the other portion of that is spent nurturing and talking to and inviting the people in your own community. And I don't care how big that community is. I was doing this when Market Like a Boss had 10 members. I was like, okay, what would I do? How would I show up if it had 1,000 members? And then just kind of kept going from there until, now we have 8,600 members. So those are really the three stages. I mean, you've got to give people that hub, that place where they can follow you and get your perspective. And, it also answers the question, why should someone hire you over other coaches or other experts? You
mm-hmm,
know, it's
mm-hmm,
that way, it's the relationship that drives that. And so that's why I recommend spending that 60 minutes a day and kind of breaking it down as is, because then you are, again, making sure that you're always bringing in new people, but then you're able to move them forward and move them closer to becoming a client. And when you do show up and write a piece of content or go live, like you need to be making those invitations every single day.
mm-hmm. And I've been a part of your community, and I have never felt like I'm being sold to. That's that as a former person that comes from a background of sales, I hate being sold to. And reading sales pages, I'm the person who scrolls until I find the first button and say, "How much is this? Just tell
Yep.
me how much it
Yep.
is."
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
don't want to be
People want to
sold.
buy, but they don't want to be sold to. That's the
Right.
thing that is important. Yeah.
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 Yeah. So I
Yeah.
love your approach that it's not it's just an invitation. It doesn't feel your doors are open, I think is the way
Yeah.
if you were a storefront, your doors are open and you're not closed 3 days a week. I think I heard that on one of your recent podcast episodes where it was just sell. You're not they're just high pressure sales. It's your doors are open. If somebody's ready to buy, you're there to help them. And I love
Yeah.
that
And
approach.
if they're not, that's okay too. Like
Hmm.
as part of my system, I'm also following up once a week with people that I've talked to and not from a place of like, are you ready to hire me? But just how you doing?
Yeah,
It's so simple, but very few people do that in today's world.
right,
You know,
right.
how are you? Last time we talked about X, Y, and Z. How's that going for you? And I truly want to know.
Yeah.
I don't need people to buy from me. I mean, as the time that we're recording this, I'm completely sold out in my coaching anyway until September. So, I mean,
Wow.
I like don't need but how did I get to that point, right? Because I know people hear that and they're like, well, I got to that point doing everything we just talked about,
Hmm.
serving before the sale, right? Like
Hmm.
making that invitation. I mean, the reason why my coaching is sold out isn't just from the work I was doing this month or last month. It's from the work I've been doing. It's from following this one system and going all in on one thing instead of scattering myself and trying to do a million things,
Hmm.
you know?
Yeah.
It's going deep versus wide. I mean, these are the results that you see on the other side of that. The stability that I have, the consistency that I have is not normal in this industry. And the same thing with my clients. What they have is not normal, but that's because we're putting relationships first
Yeah.
and we're doing what so few people are willing to invest time to do. But I think they're going to have to start investing time doing it as the world changes.
I think so too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Unless they are affiliate marketers and they're just trying to
Yep.
get a large following. That's,
Right.
yeah. Yeah.
Right.
And that's just a quick sell. But not all of us are Kardashians. We can't all do that. So
Do we want to be? Nor do
I
we want
don't,
to be.
nope, nope. I don't want to
I'm
be. I
good.
don't,
Yeah. Right.
yeah.
Right.
I
Yep.
don't want
Yep.
to. I love the creativity of doing reels and the things sometimes on Facebook and Instagram, but I also love to not have to dance and sing and do
No.
all it. I don't want to have to do those things if I don't want to do those things. If you love it, great. But if you don't love it, I don't want to be a slave to the algorithm. And I think that that's where building the relationships is so important.
Yeah. I don't know what the algorithm's doing. I don't care.
Right.
I really don't care,
Yeah.
you know,
Yep.
because
Yeah.
if it's relying on the algorithm, then I'm not building the depth of the relationship that would lead someone to purposefully seek out my Facebook group. I'm sure
Hmm.
the algorithm does feed it to them. That's fine. I'm not saying it like doesn't matter at all, but I'm just not thinking about it that
Right.
way.
Hmm.
So yeah, there's a lot of peace in that too.
There is.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. And if we're always stressing and striving and posting that one piece of content that we think this is going to be the one, this is the piece of content that's going to get somebody to buy something from me, that brings our stress levels and our cortisol levels up so high. Then we get a drop of, we get a high of dopamine and then we get a drop. And that's where the mindset comes in, where it's like, what is going on? What's wrong with me? This isn't working. And it's like, it's not just one piece of content that's going to flip everything around like the marketers on Instagram would make you think it is. It's,
100%. I mean, I have a lot of content that doesn't perform well, and I have a lot of content that does. The stuff that I never thought would perform well is usually the stuff that performs well. The things that I'm like trying so hard to like get right usually don't perform well.
yeah.
I've
Yeah.
just learned that I have to keep relearning that lesson if I'm honest, but
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah.
Well, I'll post something and no, I won't get any likes. Does doesn't I don't
Yeah.
care if it performs or not. Nothing happens to it. But in real life, people will come up to me and be like, Amy, what you wrote was so powerful. It changed my life. They didn't like it. They didn't comment
Nope.
on it.
Nope.
So we just have to serve and just continue serving. And I think that that's part of the walk with God too, is that
Yeah.
our heart is in the right place, that we're not putting that content out there to make a
Yep.
sale. We're putting that content out there to serve the people we're called to serve.
100%. And if I can just say something really quick about this,
Sure.
I've had that experience too where people have come to me and commented on, a post that there were no likes or comments. I've seen a huge shift. I think it probably started in 2020. People are commenting less
Hmm.
visibly. I think that I don't know, I have a lot of thoughts about why this is. I won't unpack all of them right now, but I think that to some degree, there's been changes in our society that have led people to feel vulnerable and like shame if they're struggling with something.
Hmm.
And so they're not commenting visibly. I'll tell you though, my DMs are filled more than they've ever been. I think that there's just this like fear of being how I'm going to be perceived more than ever. And so I don't think I think we should understand that that's happening, especially
Yeah.
if you help people with a sensitive, subject area. Like you're probably not going to get people being like, oh, yeah, I have money problem. Like no one wants to
Right.
say that
Right.
publicly. So I think our calls to action need to shift a little bit and inviting maybe some private personal conversation.
Hmm.
So that's the first thing. The other thing I wanted to share is that my engagement, and I've heard this from other group owners, just specifically for Facebook groups, but this is probably reflective of what's happening, in other channels. Our engagement has dipped, but our sales have increased. So what
Mm.
does that tell us? Right? That it's not
Hmm.
about the engagement. It's not about the algorithm.
Right.
Engagement comes in a lot of different forms.
Right.
And I think that, engagement in conversations in private DMs, when people are binging your stuff and you don't even know it, they're engaging with you. We want like the validation, right? We want the stuff that makes us feel good, but that's not,
Right.
it's fleeting and it's not what really matters anyway. So I
Right.
feel like that's a message that someone needed to hear. So I just wanted to
Yeah,
share that.
I agree.
Yeah.
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 Thanks for sharing that.
Of course.
So there's something really discouraging about feeling like you're starting over again, and maybe you've tried coaching, network marketing, blogging, or even launched something before, but it completely flopped. So for the woman in that messy middle where nothing's new, but nothing's working, what would you tell her to focus on first?
Yeah, I mean, gosh, I think we've all experienced that. I've had so many things that have flopped or things that I'm like, I thought this was going to do well and it didn't, shifts and pivots that I've had to make. So my heart goes out to her, but also I would say this, it's an opportunity if you'll take it. It's an opportunity to look at, okay, what do I actually want? Because oftentimes the things that flop or the things that, don't go according to plan, usually deep down there's a reason behind it. Like I remember the very first time I launched a program that just like totally bombed. Later I was like, I don't know if that was really the program I wanted. Like was I doing it for the wrong reasons? Like that's something to look at. I mean, that's not always the case, but I do think that sometimes it's an opportunity for us to look at like where I was forcing things, where I was trying to take control, and how can I give that back over to the Lord and ask for his guidance. So, I mean, I do think it's an opportunity to evaluate, and see like maybe it's something that wasn't serving me, that isn't where my business is going. And it doesn't mean it's any less painful. I'm not trying to diminish the pain, but like, can I get on board with the fact that this is an opportunity for me? So I think it's an opportunity to evaluate. I think it's an opportunity to get clear on what you really want in the business. And then, it's easy to think like I'm a beginner or I'm starting over, but you're not really starting over. There's so much that you're taking with you. The most painful lessons that I've learned in my business, the things that have failed the most are like the ones that have taught me the most,
Mm,
and
hmm.
now the good things that I have in my business are a result of that. And
Right.
so I do think it's again an opportunity to look at it as an opportunity and to think about what do I really want? This gives me a chance to reevaluate. And then um to recognize that I'm not a beginner and that I'm taking skills with me, I'm taking lessons learned that will help me grow even more. And I think that goes back to like the I'm going to work it until it works.
Hmm.
So, yeah, I would, it's also okay to like take a pause and just rest for a minute and think about what you want. I don't know. I mean, I went through a lot of burnout last year and I had to sort of, I mean, it was over a year ago at this point, but I had to kind of like really take a step back and look at where I was wrapped up in the wrong things in the business. It involved letting team members go. It involved reducing expenses that had been like a monkey on my back. It involved me shutting down a program that had brought in money over the last 5 years and was doing well, but it didn't light me up anymore. It was causing too much stress. Like I had to give over a lot of things last year because of burnout, but I'll tell you, I'm on the other side. I mean, I don't ever want to say I'm completely on the other side because I think there's always going to be challenges, but having gone through that situation, it's like, oh my gosh, now there's so many joyful things that I have in the business that came as a result of me just also deciding to like pause and not just try to chase and push the next thing.
Mm, yeah. Yeah, I've seen a pattern of a lot of people, including myself, of 2024 of God really clearing things out that we did.
Pruning, a
Yeah,
pruning.
pruning,
Yeah. Hmm.
exactly. Yeah, a
Yeah.
lot of pruning happening. And I had a health coaching business before 2024, and at the beginning of the year, he asked me to lay it all down. And I had worked and created a course and created a group coaching program, and um, it flopped. Speaking of things that flopped. And really, if I think about it from hindsight, it was a blessing
Mhm.
because I did sell it to one person, and she was such a blessing to have in that program. And it became a one-on-one coaching relationship instead of a group coaching because there was one person. And it was a blessing for both of us. And so it was a success, and I learned a lot from it. And at some point, God wastes nothing, like we talked about, but
Mhm.
at some point, it will probably all come back. But it was really hard when God said, lay it down. We're not doing this anymore because it's like, but you called me to this. Why are we laying this down? And so that's goes back to not having any expectations because sometimes he does call us to things, but that's not the end place. He also led the Israelites into Egypt before they were a nation, but that wasn't the promised land. So, they thought maybe, when they when Joseph's family went there, they were trying to make sure that they weren't going to be affected by the famine. And so he saved and created a nation when a family went into that nation. But there was no uh, expectation of, oh, this is where God's bringing
Yeah.
us.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
sometimes he brings us places that's not the destination.
Yep.
Yeah.
And it's better for us overall.
Yes. Yeah, it is. It is. Yeah, for sure. So before we wrap up, I do have to shout out your Market Like a Boss Facebook group. It's so full of gems. Every time I scroll through, I'm like, ooh, I really needed to hear that. So it's really
Oh,
good.
I'm so glad to hear that.
Yeah. Can you share a little bit about who that space is for and what kind of support women can find there?
Yeah, I mean, it's really for any woman in business, specifically, coaches, experts, strategists, service providers. And, it was originally created to be a place where you could market like a boss. And what does that mean? Well, it means that you're always in control of signing clients. And that vision hasn't changed. That vision is only going to get bigger. I am really looking to take on redefining the old definition of breadwinner, which is everything's on me. I have to push, I have to force it into, what does it look like to be a breadwinner who is still present with her family, who is following God's will, who is, not burnout, right? Like breadwinner without burnout. So, I mean, I'm leaning into even more of that. And I don't even know fully what that looks like, right? These are all kind of new revelations for me. But, really wanting to have it be a space where you can feel like you're in control and you're signing clients that you absolutely love. So, I mean, support that you can get, I think it's a light in a dark internet world. I hope that is really is truly the goal, is a place where like you're not going to feel judged, right? There's other women, kind of working toward the same things. I'm very transparent and my business and what I've dealt with and what it takes to make good money for your business and still be with your family. Like how do you juggle
Mm,
that? What does that look like? And I share a lot of resources and insights, more than I think a lot of coaches do, because I think context is important. So understanding what to
yeah.
focus on and why, how did I get to this place where I have this level of predictable, revenue? It's like I'm not keeping secrets in there. It's not
Mhm.
gatekept. So, or gate kept. So, yeah, I would say if that resonates and if this conversation has resonated, I mean, that's what happens in Market Like a Boss. I want more of these conversations. It's not exclusively for Christian women, but there are a ton of Christian women in there, yourself included. So, and it's, the people who follow me, we don't have a group where we've had like the issues of people piling on and like, I mean, if that ever happens or there's like rare moments where someone's, disrespectful, they're booted immediately. So it's also like a very safe space. I mean, in full transparency, I could have grown it to be triple the size that it is now, but we're very protective over who we let in. So, I think there are few spaces, especially Facebook groups, that have actual genuine networking where the coach shows up and shares her heart and what's going on in business. And yeah, I do sell, but to your point, it doesn't feel like selling. It's just an invitation. And I think that's a
Mhm.
good example. Like if you're like, I want to see what this actually looks like, how to do this and how to build relationships in this way. I think that what I do in there is probably a great example. So yeah, would love to have you join.
Awesome. Yeah. So I know that you had mentioned a couple of things, but what are you excited about right now? Is there anything new on the horizon that you're working on or anything specific that you'd like to invite the audience to check out?
Yeah, I'm excited about where I'm going with this whole like redefining breadwinner. And I don't have another word for it yet. So like I'm like, what is that? I feel like there's a new word that I could come up with for it, but I'm excited about that. I'm excited about having deeper conversations about like what it looks like to, own your God-given talents, what it looks like to go after more success without the burnout, because I've experienced that and chasing money. So I think those conversations I'm really excited about just overall. I am booked out with clients until September. So this was an idea that came to me yesterday. So I'm going to be offering something fun for the summer. I won't reveal exactly what it is, but it's all about like creating demand for your offer. So if anybody's interested in that, just join Market Like a Boss and you'll be able to catch that. I also have something that has been a resource in Market Like a Boss for a long time, which is 30 days to new clients. So if anyone's listening to this and like, I just want to get started, like building those relationships, what does that look like? I put together, I did this as alive in Market Like a Boss, but then put it together in kind of like almost a mini course. It's completely free, at least for now. And it's called 30 Days to New Clients. So it gives you every single day, a single actionable, practical step you can take in 60 minutes a day or less to go out and get a new client. So if anyone's like looking for something to, I don't know, like get them going this summer, or like come back to like a fresh perspective, or whenever you want to use it. I think that's a great resource, and you can get access to that when you join the community.
Awesome. Thank
Yeah.
you.
So those are
Well,
just some things I've got going on. I mean, I'm sure there'll be more. There's always more, but I'm also going to enjoy the summer with my kids too, and like really practice what I preach. So, yeah.
yes, amen to
Yeah.
that. Well, Michelle, thank you so much for being here. I'm walking away from this conversation totally fired up, and I know that the women listening are too. So, ladies, if this episode has stirred something in you, if you felt that little nudge in your spirit, you've got to check out Michelle's Facebook group, Market Like a Boss. The link is in the show notes, along with her podcast and Instagram. So go give her a follow and dive into the amazing resources that she offers. If you're listening to this and you're thinking, okay, I'm ready, but I need someone to help me actually take these steps, that's exactly what I do in my one-on-one coaching. Michelle can help you with the marketing side of things, and I will help you break free from the overthinking and the fear side of it so that you can finally build what God is putting in your heart. You don't have to do it alone. Thanks so much for hanging out with me today. Until next time. That's it for today, friend. Before you go, if this podcast has blessed you, the best way you can say thank you is to leave a written review on Apple Podcasts or leave a 5-star rating wherever you listen. And don't forget to hit follow so you never miss an episode. The second thing you can do, share it with a friend, because when you do, you're creating a ripple effect, helping more women step into the breakthrough they've been praying for. And last, if there is ever a topic you'd like me to cover, please reach out and let me know. I'm here to help you get the breakthrough that you need. And just in case no one has told you today, look at how far you have come. There hasn't been a single challenge you haven't overcome. You are strong, capable, and gifted, and God has a beautiful purpose and plan for your life. You are the daughter of the one true King, his masterpiece, and your story is a testimony to other women. If you're ready to take this work deeper, I'd love to help you one-on-one. Visit amywadlington.com/coaching to learn more about working together. Keep shining, keep growing, and be so incredibly proud of the woman you are and the woman you are becoming. Thank you so much for listening. Until next time.